It is the story of Ife and Modakeke. It is a story of blood, a story of land and destiny. It is the story of brothers turned rivals, a tale of home and exile, of land and belonging. It is a story that echoes across time, across continents, wherever people have drawn lines between us and them. Welcome to the class of history, politics, and power. It is state affairs. The Ife-Modakeke crisis is one of Nigeria's oldest interethnic conflicts. It is a wound that has reopened time and again, from the first battles of the 19th century to the violent clashes of the 1990s. It has tested the limits of community, justice, and reconciliation. But this is not just about Ife and Modakeke. It is about the world. A story as old as time. There is an old saying that no matter how long the night, the dawn will come. But some nights refuse to end. For over 250 years, the people of Ife and Modakeke have lived as neighbors, yet walked the path of rivals. Brothers in lineage, yet divided by history. Sons and daughters of the same ancestors, yet locked in a circle of war and uneasy peace. The land remembers their battles. The soil is soaked with the blood of generations past. A former governor of Osun State, Bisi Akonde, reminds us of how the ugly quarrel reared its head again in the Second Republic when Bola Ige was the governor of Old Oyo State.
There was going to be creation of local governments, and there have been lots of arguments about where and where should be local government. And we say, okay, look, a principle must be adopted. A local government must not split a House of Assembly constituency. That you can put two constituencies within one local government. You can put four within one local government. But you can't split, a House of Assembly constituency between two local governments. When that became the matter, we say, Adlakum, go and apply it. So he brought a recommendation.
He was the commissioner of local government.
He was the commissioner for local government. And he brought a recommendation which we all approved. And local government was created. But a problem started in Ife-Modakeke. Ife-Modakeke was a 3-ward within the Onamiyan local government. And before we came, I think the military must have created something. And there have been some, mismatch. But the INEC created, they call it FEDECO then, created constituencies. And Modakeke was not a constituency of its own. Therefore, Modakeke could not have a local government of its own. Because of the principle. The principle is that a constituency should not be split between two local governments. That was the principle. But Modakeke wasn't a constituency of its own. It was part of a constituency. So it had to be a local government within that. So we made Modakeke part of several other constituencies, maybe 2 or 3 constituencies that makes up Ife Central or Ife something local government.
And Modakeke did not like that?
Well, the underlying factor was historical and grave. Even if we considered the principle, we won't be able to have a principle to to resolve it as at that time.
The Ife-Modakeke conflict is one of the most significant historical disputes in Nigeria, shaped by centuries of struggle over land, identity, and destiny. Understanding its roots requires more than just surface-level knowledge. It demands a deep dive into the cultural, political, and historical forces that define the Yoruba people. As part of Ife and Modakeke, a story of blood, land, and destiny, we encourage you to engage with these essential books that provide critical insights into Yoruba history, culture, and politics. These works not only enhance our understanding of the Ife-Modakeke conflict, but also offer a broader perspective on Yoruba civilization and its evolution over time. These are the books I'm talking about. You look at this, the collected works of J.A. Atunda. I'll come back to this because I'm going to read from this book. It's a class of history, politics, and power. Look at this book, Culture and Customs of the Yoruba. Well-researched book, written by more than 70 scholars. So these are the kind of books I am talking about. As a student of this class, we recommend these books to you. Hey, look at this one. Yoruba Nation and Politics since the 19th century. Yoruba Nations and Politics since the 19th century. So these are big books, well researched by scholars on history, politics, and power. These books provide a deeper understanding of Yoruba history and by implication offers deep insight into the Ife-Modakeke crisis. So I want to read from one of the books, and it's from this book, The Collected Works of J.A. Atunda. J.A. Atunda was one of the foremost scholars of Yoruba history, and this collection of his works covers essential topics such as the Old and New Oyo Empire. It covers topics such as colonial Nigeria and reflections on post-independence governance. His scholarship offers a critical lens through which to examine historical Yoruba conflicts, including the Ife-Modakeke War, within broader African political and social transformations. Let's read from page 82 and 83. I want to read from the chapter entitled The Origin of the Yoruba People and the Rise of Oduduwa. I picked this chapter to draw our attention to the question of migration. Because by the time we move deeper into the Ife-Modakeke crisis, you would see that it is a conflict of migration. So Oduduwa, was he a migrant or not? J. Atunda says, Yoruba oral traditions of origin, hitherto collected and popularized, present apparently contradictory information about the origin of the Yoruba people. On the one hand, there is a body of tradition which claims that the Yoruba had been inheriting their homeland since the time of creation. According to this tradition, in the beginning, when the world was only a mass of water, God sent Oduduwa from heaven to create the earth and the human race. J.A. Atonda continues. Oduduwa descended with his lieutenants and landed at Ile-Ife, where he accomplished this task. Thus, by this tradition, Ile-Ife was the cradle not only of the Yoruba, but also all mankind. On the other hand, there is a body of tradition which claims that the Yoruba migrated to their present homeland from Mecca under the leadership of Oduduwa as a result of a political crisis in Arabia after the rise of Islam. Atonda says some scholars have examined the details of this tradition and concluded that while it was possible that the Yoruba had contact with Mecca or other parts of Arabia before they migrated, their real place of origin was either Egypt or Nubia. The scholar says, in any case, they too did not deny that Oduduwa was the leader of the migrants. So take note of the words migration, migrant. In one aspect of the story, Oduduwa was a migrant. Being a migrant meant that when he arrived in Ile-Ife, he met people on ground. I want us to move to page 83. Atonda says, in any case, it is an indication that human beings had been created before the advent of Oduduwa. He could therefore not have been the leader of the Yoruba at the time referred to by the creation history. In the second place, there is evidence in tradition to show that Oduduwa had to struggle with an existing group not only for possession of land, but for leadership. In this respect, the episode of Moremi, the woman who wittingly and at the expense of the life of her only son saved her people from annihilation, should be seen as a commemoration of the struggle of Oduduwa and his group to take effective control of the land and the leadership from an earlier group of people referred to in tradition as the Ubo. Atonda in his book says, in view of this, it is clear that Oduduwa did not belong to the earliest known generation in Yoruba history. The question of the possible place of his migration to Ife, if in fact he migrated, will be discussed later in this book. It is a book you should read as a son and daughter of Yoruba land. It's a book you should read as a history enthusiast, whether you are Yoruba, Igbo, Fulani, European, American, or Arabian. Atonda has given us a classic, and reading this classic gives us a broader understanding of the Ife-Modakeke crisis. Remember, I said it's about migration. The fall of Old Oyo in the 19th century forced its people south. Among them were the Modakekes. They were warriors, they were traders, and they were survivors. They found refuge in Ife. But history has taught us that refugees do not remain refugees forever. The Modakekes grew in number. They built homes, they farmed the land, and then came the question, who owns what? First, there were the wars of 1849. Then the communal violence of 1882. Remember the land disputes of the 1940s? What about the confrontation over the reception of a British parliamentarian, Reverend Sorensen, in January 1949? I still remember the conflict over the establishment of Modakeke High School. What about the conflict over the establishment of Olorunshogo Plank Market? We can also talk about the opposition to self-help development projects by a fundraising activity of Modakeke in 1980. The battle for a separate local government that sparked bloodshed in the 1980s and 1990s are still fresh in our minds. Chibisi Akonde, a former governor of Osun State, explains the role he played to check the conflict between Ife and Modakeke. And that issue also reared its head again when you became governor of Osun State.
It's not that it read again. It was never resolved then. It was never resolved for 20 years before I came back as a governor. So what I did, was to create an area council for Modakeke by making it 1/3 of Ife East, and say the allocation coming from Abuja for Ife East should be split into 3. 30% should be given to Modakeke Area Council.
Did it solve the problem?
Well, since then, no problem.
The story of Ife and Modakeke is not a single battle. It is a cycle, a wound that heals just enough to be reopened by the next generation. But is this only an Ife-Modakeke story? Or is it the story of humanity? Look beyond Nigeria. What do you say? In Belfast, Northern Ireland, Catholics and Protestants fought for generations over identity, power, and land, just as Ife and Modakeke have. In Rwanda, the Hutus and Tutsis lived as neighbors for centuries, but political tension turned them into enemies. What followed was a genocide. In Palestine and Israel, the fight is not just over land, but over history, over the right to exist. From Bosnia to Sudan, history repeats itself. Those who arrive seeking refuge soon find themselves accused of overstaying their welcome. The line between guest and rival fades. Umuleri and Aguleri in southeastern Nigeria is another example. Everywhere, the struggle is the same. Who was here first? Who deserves to rule? Who should yield? History tells us one thing. When people fail to resolve their past, the past comes back to destroy their future. And so, Ife and Modakeke became trapped in a circle of violence, one generation after another. The battlefield of the 19th century was different from that of the 1990s, but the curse remained the same: power. The traditional institutions in Yoruba land even became entangled in the crisis that consumed lives. How did the violence at that time, how did it make you feel as governor of Osun State?
It was disturbing me a lot. I had to run to Obasanjo and beg him to come and intervene, to come and help me resolve it. The reason was that they are laughing of Oyo, the Awujale of Ijebu-Ode, Adesekola Alao of Ibadan. They were all behind Modakeke, and they were outside my own state. So I needed somebody who can help me to talk to them.
Why were they behind Modakeke?
Because Modakeke is an Oyo town. So Alafin believed and he wrote down.
Interesting.
Modakeke felt it's not Ife. Alafin felt Modakeke is Oyo. And Alafin felt that Ife was persecuting Oyo within its territory. And Alafin, had to employ the support of Awujale, of Adesekola and so on, to bail out Modakeke out of the problem. And it became, a terrible problem.
As we discuss the Ife-Modakeke crisis, I recommend this book to you, Culture and Customs of the Yoruba, 1,040 pages. It tells you everything you need to know about Yoruba history, all forms of Yoruba history, music, dance. You find everything in this book, edited by renowned professors. Remember Professor Tony Falola? Culture and Customs of the Yoruba. This is a book you should have in your shelf. So this groundbreaking volume, entitled Culture and Customs of the Yoruba, brings together 75 scholars from various disciplines, offering a multifaceted study of Yoruba culture, from anthropology and literature to history, religion, law and medicine. The book Culture and Customs of the Yoruba examines both traditional customs and their modern transformations. For anyone interested in the cultural foundation of the Ife-Modakeke conflict, how identity, customs, and social norms shape disputes, this book provides an indispensable resource. The Ife-Modakeke crisis is not an isolated event, but a product of centuries of Yoruba history. These books I have talked about in this class provide the necessary background to grasp its complexities. It's about land, it's about power, and it's about the triggers of war. The 1997 crisis between Ife and Modakeke started with a simple demand. Modakeke wanted a local government of her own. It was granted, but with a twist. The headquarters was placed in an area dominated by Ife indigents. A decision, a protest, a war. Houses burnt, lives lost, another chapter of bloodshed added to history. This is how wars start, not with the thunder of guns, but with decisions made in quiet rooms, decisions about identity, control, and dignity. Today, the drums of war are silent, but silence is not the same as peace. But it seems it is not the peace of the graveyard. The scars of the past still shape the present. Ife still holds its position as the cradle of the Yoruba race, with the Oni as the spiritual father of all Yoruba people, including the Modakekes. Modakeke still stands proud as a town of warriors and builders, determined to carve its own destiny. It it almost marred your administration.
No, nobody can pass through my state. Some people were killed on their journey through the state. Some strangers passing through the state. So everybody was avoiding my state. He couldn't allow us to govern. He couldn't allow business. Couldn't allow, It was a terrible situation.
But does that speak of the kind of politics we play? Because it reared its head during Bola Ige's era.
Yeah, it started well before Bola Ige was born. The problem had been since about 1870, 1880.
And we could not solve it for many years.
It was not resolved until Bola Ige came. But what brought it out during Bola Ige was the creation of local government. And the military couldn't resolve it for 20 years before Bola Ige's time and my time.
But you resolved it?
Oh, yes, God helped me to resolve it.
Look at this solid work of history. You said, solid work of history. Yoruba nation and politics since the 19th century. Yoruba nation and politics since the 19th century. These are well-researched books. This is another classic that you should read. I recommend it to you. Yoruba Nation and Politics since the 19th century. Edited by distinguished historians Toyin Falola and Dikbo Olubomehi. This collection explores the political history of the Yoruba people. It provides crucial context for understanding how colonialism, governance structures, and Yoruba nationalism have influenced intergroup relations, including tensions between Ife and Modakeke. This book is particularly valuable for readers who want to connect the past with contemporary Yoruba politics. So the book is a goal. Once you get it, you have scored a goal. The Yoruba Nation and Politics since the 19th century. But let me ask you a question. Can a people truly share a land without war? The world has seen it play out in different ways. The Tutsis and Hutus of Rwanda, once neighbors, turned against each other in 1994, leading to a genocide. So they could not share a land without war. The Israelis and the Palestinians have fought for decades over land. Both sides call the land home. They are still fighting. So, they cannot share a land without war. The Yugoslav wars shattered a nation along ethnic and religious lines. Yet, there are also stories of healing. In post-apartheid South Africa, truth and reconciliation took the place of revenge. In Northern Ireland, peace agreements replaced centuries of sectarian violence. As events look, Ife and Modakeke have chosen peace. Since the year 2000, peace has returned, but the scars remain. The tension simmers beneath the surface. Minor disputes arise, but traditional rulers intervene before they explode. There is something deeper than politics at play here. It is the wisdom of history, the quiet lessons that whisper in the ears of those willing to listen. Conflict cannot last forever. At some point, the land must be shared, or it will be lost to war. Intermarriages now link Ife and Modakeke in ways that guns never could. A new generation is growing up with less hatred in their hearts. This is the real hope the realization that blood spilled cannot be undone, but a different future can be built. So, we return to the question, who owns the land? Perhaps the land owns us all. It outlives us. It watches as we fight, as we kill, as we burn. And when we are gone, the land remains waiting for the next generation to decide whether to repeat history or to rewrite it. Hey, the land does not belong to the dead. It belongs to the living. And the living must choose. There is always the road to peace. The choice is ours. I am Edmondo Bilo. Thank you for being part of the class of history, politics, and power.